Hello and welcome back to another episode of Hawaiian Shirt Projects. Today we're going to be working inside the forge. We're going to be making some small finger hooks, as well as bottle openers. If you want to learn more as to how they're made, stick around.
So to get things going today, we're going to go ahead and get the fire lit in the forge. We are going to be using the small forge today. It's a small project. So we're just going to put some paper in there, a little bit of kindling, a little bit of lighter fluid. Say a little lighter fluid goes a real long way. And away we go. We got a fire started. Now on my coal forge, I do have a hand crank blower. It is a Buffalo blower. Works pretty darn good. Just got to give a little bit of oil every now and then, and she pumps out quite a bit of air. For this project, I'm going to be using just a small bar of 1/4-inch round stock mild steel. Works good for a lot of these small projects like this. You could pick it up at your local hardware store. Usually a good idea to have some on hand. So I went ahead and got it up to yellow heat. This is a good forging temperature. I knocked off the end there by giving a little bit of a taper, and then I flattened it down. In this spot, I should have left it round until I got that bend in there, because later on when I put the bend into it, it does kind of twist on me a little. Then I have to work on straightening it out again. So word of advice, leave it round to start with. So we are going to want to get the bend going on. We're going to go about 2 inches down the material, knock it over the edge of the anvil here, and that'll give us the start of our bend. Once we got the bend started, we go ahead and flip it over 180, pointing upward, and just kind of keep pulling it towards us a little bit with the hammer. Make that bend the angle that we want it to be. From here, if you left it round, this would be a good point to go ahead and knock it down flat. It is a good idea to have a wire brush on hand. That way, while its metal is hot, you can give it a scrape, get some of that scale off. It helps reduce how much cleanup you have later on. Now that we got the metal hot down about 2 inches from where we want to start our bend, go over to our vise. I got a piece of 1-inch round stock in there that I'm going to use as kind of a mold. I'm going to put it down on there, wrap it around, and then take my small little ball peen hammer and tap it down fairly tight to each other. As you can see here, this is the main reason for me making the pallet sheds in my other videos. I got a lot of stuff sitting around my shop taking up space. I'm going to get it all out of here once that shed is built. Give me a little bit more room to move everything around, get my forge set up the way I want it to be. So now I'm going to bring it back on over to the anvil. I'm going to tighten everything up, clean it up, make everything a little bit more even. Here's also when I realized that I messed up on the angle of my hook. I will have to twist it to get it in line with the finger loop. In order for me to do that, I'm just going to get it hot again, take a pair of pliers, grab it on each end, give it a little twist. Right here, I'm going to get it hot again. I'm going to clean everything up, get everything nice and tight together. Using very light blows at a dull heat, I'm going to use the flat end of my hammer to get rid of some of them hammer blow marks. This is also where I realized I'm going to want a little bit more of a bend into that hook, help it get a little bit more grab. I'm also going to want to clean up the circle a little bit better, that way you get your finger in there easier. Now we're going to get it hot again and start working on the bottle opener part. In order to do that, I'm going to take a decent sized punch, and we're just going to go kind of off center in the circle and start driving it down a little bit. This is going to cause the metal to flare out slightly, causing a nipple to grab hold of the top of the bottle cap. As you can see here, we went off center of the round stock towards the top of the circle, and it's starting to flare out that metal just slightly. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and take a smaller tapered punch and continue on driving it down into that divot that we already started, making that nipple larger and more pronounced in the middle. Now I do have to give a shout out to a gentleman that also does YouTube videos, amazing blacksmith, really enjoy his work, name of Alex Steele. If you haven't seen him yet, go ahead and check him out. But he did a hook very similar to this one, that's where the idea came from, so I figured it would be a pretty good idea for me to give it a shot, see if I could do it. Gives me a little bit more practice with the hammer. Now a lot of people have the misconception that for doing blacksmith work you just really gotta hit it and get in there with that hammer. But in reality, you get the metal hot, it doesn't take a whole lot of force to get to move the way you want it to. Actually, lighter taps tend to give you a little bit more accurate of movement, direction of what you're wanting to get done. So when if you do start doing your blacksmithing, remember that when the metal's hot, it moves fairly easily. You don't need to go to town on it. Now to go ahead and get the finished shape that I'm wanting, I'm going to just take the tail end when it's hot, kind of bend it back outwards a little bit, and just past that, maybe an inch or so, we're going to go ahead and cut it off with a hot cut tool. So this here is my hot cut tool for my Hardy on my anvil. All I did is I took an old splitting maul and I cut it in half and then cut out a 1-inch square shaft that will fit my Hardy hole just fine. Bit of advice for when using a hot cut tool: don't swing very hard because you'll end up driving the metal all the way down and possibly end up damaging your hammer. Just give it a couple of taps until you get nice and close to where it's about ready to cut through. Then you can pull it off, use a pair of pliers or your tongs, twist it back and forth, it'll snap off no problem. This right here is an example of one of the better features of doing a coal forge compared to a gas forge. So if you're only wanting to heat up a small section, you just put that small piece down into the fire. The rest of it kind of can sit out. It'll get warm, but it won't get as hot as the section that you're actually wanting to. A little bit more control. Now if you remember earlier when I said I want to get a little bit more in the bend of that hook, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to bring it over to the horn, and again just give some nice light taps, make sure to rotate it around. That'll give us that good hook shape that we're wanting. At this point in the video, I want to say thank you guys for watching it this far. You're fantastic, and thank you to my 26 subscribers. You guys are awesome. If you're enjoying the content that I'm making, if you want to learn more about some blacksmithing and other projects like this, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you don't like it, go and hit that thumbs down and let me know down there in the comments. Regardless, if you're enjoying it or you got advice as to anything, go ahead again, shoot a message down there in them comments. Really appreciate it. You guys are fantastic. Now that I got everything cleaned up and about the shape that I'm wanting it to be, I'm going to go ahead and give it a small quench at this low heat in some water. That way it'll help keep that nipple for the bottle opener kind of preserved and keep it straight. That way it doesn't bend out on people. Now it's about that time to go ahead and run back over the vise. I'm going to use my drill and a wire brush. We're going to get it cleaned up a little bit more, knocked off some of that scale. Once we're done with the wire brush, we're going to grab a little bit of sandpaper, just kind of go over everything, kind of smoothing it all back out. Then once I'm done with the sandpaper, I'm going to grab my file. I'm just going to go along and knock off any of the sharp edges that may be on this piece. Now I'm going to set it back on top of the coals, get it up to a little bit warm, at least hot enough to where I don't want to touch with my bare hands. I'm going to drop it down in my can of beeswax, use a red rag, kind of dip it in there, rub that beeswax all over the place. Now the point of getting the metal hot, before using the beeswax or any other type of paste you might use on it is it'll open up the pores to allow it to soak in there and help preserve it longer. And just like that, we have a finished product. So, as always, I want to say thank you guys and stay classy, party on.